All right, folks. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Joe Bacon with SYSTRAN. We've got a great product demonstration lined up for you today. But before we get into that, I'd like to give the group a little bit of background for those of you who are not familiar with SYSTRAN. SYSTRAN's been a leader in the machine language translation technology field for about 50 years now. And we provide everything with regards to solutions from desktop solution software all the way up to customized solutions for large organizations such as Adobe and Accenture. But what you'll see today or throughout the demonstration is a very unique product innovation partnership that we have with partner company Language.io that'll demonstrate the power of integrating machine language translation technology being deployed into the customer care field. Now, before we get started, just a few ground rules to kind of guide how we'll go through today's discussion. I'll have everyone placed on mute just to make sure that we cut out any potential background noise. I'd ask for everyone to ask questions throughout the presentation in the chat window. We'll have a QA session towards the end of the discussion, which will attempt to answer all questions that come in through the chat window. I'd like to ask us to also additionally send me your email addresses. You can private message or direct message me in the chat window. That way, if we have any technical difficulties and I need to reach out to you after the call, I can get you any material that you've missed. So we'll start off today with a little bit of storytelling to kind of set the tone and kind of get our minds focused on what we should be getting out of today's discussion. So if you pay attention to your screen, I'll introduce you to the main character of our story, which is named Mary. We'll talk a little bit about Mary's dilemma. Mary works for the big corporation or the big company. She is a 25-year-old CSR, stellar performer, has done really well with the company and has been with the company for about 3 years and is fluent like most of us in just one language, which is English. Now, Mary's dilemma is that she's just recently learned that the big company has plans to expand service capability to over 6 countries. From the company's perspective, they've been planning it for about 18 months. From Mary's perspective, this is happening next week. So of course, Mary goes into a little bit of a panic, but then gathers herself together and says, you know what, I can do this. I'll just spend some time training and becoming a language ninja in order to be able to support this new initiative. Or perhaps not. What Mary is unaware of is that her organization invested in a tool that would allow her to communicate in any language across the world and not have to do any additional training. They've spent time working with a company called Language.io to deploy a piece of technology that would allow her to communicate in any language securely and with using industry-specific terminology in order to service customers. So what you should get out of today's discussion is we'll talk a little bit about what machine language translation technology is, how it can benefit contact centers or call center solutions, how machine language technology can also help improve core metrics for call centers such as average handle time, average speed of answer, average cost per call, most especially CSAT. And then of course, most importantly, how do I get this solution deployed within my organization? So as I said before, this is a unique innovation collaboration with a partner that we've been working on for some time named Language.io. I'd like to turn the presentation now over to our partner, Heather Shoemaker, CEO of Language.io, who will take us through the balance of our presentation and tell us some really cool, or show us some really cool statistics with regards to what their company has been able to do with the SYSTRAN language translation engine. Heather, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Jay. Nice to meet you, everyone. Heather Shoemaker. I'm CEO of Language.io, a SYSTRAN partner. And I will be just walking you through a few slides to introduce our technology, our integration with SYSTRAN, how it all works together, a few statistics, and then we will dive right into a demo of our technology inside of Salesforce using SYSTRAN machine translation technology. All right, so Language.io has been around for a while. We were actually founded in 2011. We've been partnered with SYSTRAN for neural machine translation services for some years. And our goal in life is to allow companies to easily provide multilingual customer support using their existing monolingual support agents. Often those are English-speaking support agents. We are ISO 27001 certified. We take security very seriously because when you are passing chats and emails to us for translation, we just assume that that content is going to contain personal data, and we handle it accordingly. As I mentioned, our focus is on multilingual customer support, and we automate translation of every type of e-support content inside of the CRM where the agent is already working. That includes articles, tickets, chats, social cases, so on and so forth. We also expose APIs. And we are integrated into, as I already mentioned, all of the major CRMs, including Salesforce, Zendesk, and Oracle Service Cloud. So while today's demo is going to focus on Salesforce, the exact same functionality is provided in these other CRMs as well. Okay, so why is this an important problem to solve? A lot of you already realize this, and I'm just speaking to the choir. 74% of customers are more likely to buy if support is provided in their native language. So this is why it's an important problem that Language.io, SYSTRAN are solving together. So how would you do this without Language.io? The global average for a fully loaded customer support position is $45,000 annually in US dollars. I've actually got a return on investment calculator that will dive more deeply into this if time allows at the end of this session, but just on average, around the world, that's what you're going to pay. An average support agent can field between 50 and 100 support requests a day. So, they are limited in what they can field. And often when you're going into a new language, even though if you staff up with native speakers, there's not enough volume to actually occupy a full-time agent entirely, you have to hire full-time agents, because how else are you going to do that if you are staffing up with native speakers? Now, on average, Language.io enterprise customers support 10 languages. So you're staffing up with at least 10 customer service agents if you're doing the staffing model. With Language.io plus SYSTRAN, what you're going to do is allow your existing customer support agents to field those questions in any language. Often you don't even have to hire new people, but using a technology solution. So the way this works, and this little diagram kind of shows you, is there will be apps embedded in the CRM inside the views that your agents are already using. They don't have to go anywhere else to field these tickets and chat requests in other languages. They're working right inside of Salesforce, Zendesk, Oracle Service Cloud. But our apps are reaching out to the Language.io server, which in turn is going to pull in the best translation for that channel. All different e-support channels, like I was mentioning. If we are translating articles or a whole bunch of articles, we will likely pull in professional linguists who are already working in our platform to translate the knowledge base. But that won't be the focus of today, because today we're focused on our SYSTRAN integration. If we're talking about a chat session, there's no time for a human linguist in a chat session. We're going to need to hit a machine translation engine. So Language.io can hit SYSTRAN to pull in the machine translation to make sure that that support agent can talk real time with their customer in any language. If it is a ticket, we can do a hybrid of both human and machine. Language.io has professional human linguists who are focused on rapid turnaround translations. So the agent might elect to machine translate the incoming customer question, and that can be via SYSTRAN. But for the agent's response, if it's a super complicated response and the agent does not want to trust the response to machine translation, they can always pull in a human translation of their response, and it turns around very quickly. Now, of course, with the SYSTRAN dictionary functionality, we can make sure that the company's terms that might easily get mistranslated with raw or out of the box machine translation are properly handled in that chat session or in that ticket. And I'll show you a few examples here in a second. So on average, our customers save a lot of money using Language.io. Here are just a few of our large brand names and how much they are saving using Language.io, our technology coupled with SYSTRAN, plus their existing agents, versus had they had to staff up per language. All of this depends on the number of languages that they need to support, the volumes that they are supporting, et cetera. But this is what we estimated that our customers are saving today. And here are just a handful of companies that Language.io works with, just so you have a feel for some additional brands that are using this solution. Okay, as I mentioned, we support all e-support channels in the CRM. So again, e-support is anything that's text-based. So that's tickets, that's chats, that's social cases, articles, etc. And at this point, we're going to show you an example of what dictionary imposition looks like. And 72% of our customers have not had to hire an additional support agent. So what that means is often your existing monolingual, or in many English-speaking support agents, are able to field all of the initial volumes coming from other countries in other languages without hiring additional staff at all. As far as feature differentiators are concerned, we support over 150 languages, direct SYSTRAN integration, so all of your machine translation content can be passed straight through SYSTRAN via API, no cutting and pasting. When we do pull in human linguists, they will be professional human linguists. This is not a crowdsourced solution. I already mentioned that we're ISO 27001 certified. And one thing that's important to note, when chat and ticket content is passed into Language.io for translation, one of the first things that we do before we even consider translating the content is we scan that content for personal data. We have relatively sophisticated algorithms that are looking for personal data across all the languages that we support. When we find personal data, we encrypt that data before it's passed into SYSTRAN for machine translation or passed to our human linguists for human translation. And of course, we're GDPR compliant. Okay, so this is one example of user-generated content that was recently passed through Language.io for translation. This came from an online gambling customer in Spain who is trying to place a bet, incidentally, on Rafael Nadal in the French Open. Everything in orange is either a misspelling or a tennis-specific abbreviation. If all we were to do was pass this through an out-of-the-box machine translation solution that knew nothing about this company's language or tennis-specific terminology, the translation you're going to get is going to look something like this. I have made the promotion for the Ghana 4 of the RG with Rafa, and you have not given me the Ultima free. So the support agent would be completely confused. So literally, the reason you want to use a solution like Language.io plus SYSTRAN is because with this solution, the agent will understand the customer. It's literally the difference between understanding the customer or not understanding the customer. On the next screen, you're going to see what it looks like when it was passed through the Language.io SYSTRAN combination. So because we've used the SYSTRAN dictionaries and the misspelling, it's going to get this translation. I've redeemed the promo code for the French Open winner with Rafael Nadal, and you have not given me the latest free. So in this case, RG is an abbreviation for the Roland Garros tennis tournament, or in the US, which we call the French Open. Rafa is a cutesy nickname that this user used for Rafael Nadal. Those terms will never be properly translated in an out-of-the-box neural machine translation scenario. You need this combination to get a good translation. At this point, I will go ahead and take over screen sharing, and we will show you a demo. Okay, it looks like, Jay, you need to stop. Thank you. Okay. So at this point, we should see Salesforce on the left-hand side, and over here on the right-hand side is just a really default customer support portal. I'm sure your support portals are much more sophisticated than this. We're going to launch a chat session over here on the right, and I'm actually going to use the exact language that I just showed you in the deck so you can see the live translation of that messy content. Over here on the left, I am playing the role of a support agent who is accepting the support chat request, and you can see the standard Salesforce chat popping up. Okay, so the first thing that happens when you use a Language.io solution is an autoresponder goes out to the customer. We like to level set or properly set expectations for the customer and let them know, hey, in the interest of responding to you as quickly as possible, we will be machine translating between you and the support agent. So that autoresponder has gone out. The customer over here on the right knows that a support agent is ready to talk to them. So we will go ahead and paste the messy Rafael Nadal chat. So the customer is asking for support. Over here on the agent side on the left, what we're seeing is that it has been properly translated. Rafa was translated into Rafael Nadal, RG was translated into French Open, and all of those spelling errors have been fixed, so the agent actually understands what's being asked. I have redeemed the promo code for the winner of the French Open with Rafael Nadal, and you have not given me the latest free. So it's instantly translated into English for the support agent. Notice that the support agent does have the ability to see the original Spanish if they need to for whatever reason. Usually they don't, so we hide that by default, but the agent can go ahead and respond and say something helpful. So when the agent chats in English, it instantly is translated into Spanish over here for the customer. So one thing I'd like to point out is something that Language IO can expose for customers that want this feedback loop to be in place is the ability for the customer to rate the translation. In Spanish, it's letting the customer know that they can go ahead and rate this translation. They can give it 5 stars, they can give it 1 star, whatever the customer feels is appropriate for that translation. So now the agent will say something else helpful. So I'll keep this very simple, but I think it's pretty straightforward what the workflow looks like. The English chats coming from the support agent are instantly translated into Spanish for the customer. They're good translations. The customer gets what's being asked. And you're good to go. So that is what chat looks like in the Language IO plus SYSTRAN solution that provides the support agent with the ability to basically respond to chats in any language and instantaneously. So at this point, we will wrap up the chat session and dive into what it looks like to translate a case. So case translation using Language IO plus SYSTRAN is very similar. The workflow is just a little bit different. If you're familiar with Salesforce cases, you'll know. So if I'm a support agent and what I do is respond to cases during the day, I'm going to have a queue that looks something like this. I can jump into a case that hasn't been handled yet. This should all look familiar to you. When I recognize that this case is in a language that I don't speak, I'm going to click over to the Language IO tab. This tab can basically be called anything that you want it to be called. But what's going to happen on the Language IO tab is any thread that's part of the case will show up here with the option to translate it. So we can see the subject and the body of the customer's email, and we can translate both. When you mouse over one of these, you'll see a translate option here. And what happens is the content is sent to our server. As with chat, it's pushed right back into the agent's view. So we can see that there was a problem with the bet. Now we can also translate the main body of the customer's email by mousing over this and clicking on translate. Also notice that there's this little partial option that you're seeing. So you can actually select to only translate a piece of the customer's email if it's a really long email and you know you don't need the whole thing translated. In this case, the translations have been pushed in. We can click on it to see the full translation. And the same thing is happening here that was happening in chat. The messy Spanish content coming from the customer is normalized and properly translated, with RG being translated into French Open. Rafa was translated as Rafael Nadal, and all of the Spanish misspellings were fixed. So the agent knows what's being asked and can very easily go ahead and respond. So if you're ready to respond, you're going to do that where you normally do it, over here on the feed tab in this particular page layout. By the way, we're working in Lightning, but both of these apps are also available for the classic view of Salesforce as well. So you're going to, in this case, it's an email. We'll go ahead and respond with an email to the customer. Let's just get rid of this for now. And often, this is really big. Let's make it smaller. you're going to be responding to the same questions over 50 times a day. So the unique content that you're going to send this customer, you can keep to a minimum. And once you've got all of the unique content that requires translation, over here on the right, you'll see an option to translate it. It will tell you what you're translating from and what you're translating to. And you'll also see this really cool option, translation type, which allows you to select either machine translation, which would go through SYSTRAN in this case, or human translation. If you've put a lot of time and effort into translating this response and you want a human translation of your response, that is also an option. But let's say as a company, you don't want your support agents to even have the option to human translate their responses. That's more expensive. You can lock it down so it's always machine, or you can only expose this toggle to a certain profile of agent to whom you want to give permission to request human translation. So lots of options, out of the box configurations are available. This is a demo. I'm going to click translate next to machine. And what's going to happen is the content of the visual editor will be grabbed, sent to the Language.io server, translated through SYSTRAN, and then the Spanish translation is going to be pushed right back in. I've kept my unique content for this response very short because I know that I have an already human translated quick text ready to pull in, because this is one of those questions that I answer over and over again throughout the day, and I don't want to retranslate it over and over again. So Language.io can human translate your quick texts to make, you know, your agents more efficient and to save money, because you're not paying to translate the same content over and over. And when you are ready to send your entire response, you click on send and you are good to go. I should mention too that for both chats and emails, all of the translated content and the source content is actually stored in custom objects. So you'll always be able to go back. If you're, let's say, an English speaking manager and you don't speak Spanish either, you can go back and see both the Spanish and the English versions of every thread in this case. And in the case of chats, we store both the Spanish and English versions in the chat transcript. So that's available to managers as well. So I've been trying to keep my demo relatively short, Jay. At this point, we can dive into questions.
Thank you, Heather. Sorry, it took a minute to get my audio back up there.
No worries.
So we have a few questions that have come up, and I'll just kind of rattle them off to you. I think some of these you may have answered to some degree as you were going through your presentation, but we'll just kind of jump into them and see what you say. So one question was how will the language ninja be able to take into consideration cultural norms while chatting with customers in another language? And again, you answered this to some degree with regards to domain-specific chat capability, but was there anything else that you thought we could add with regards to cultural norms while communicating in a different language?
Yeah, and I've got some great examples specific to our integration with SYSTRAN. So in certain cultures and languages, you want to be more formal than in other cultures and languages where formality isn't as valued, right? So I'll just use the example of German. Early on, when Language.io got into this space, our customers kept saying, you know, it would be really nice if you could provide a machine translation that was always formal in the German response, because when we're just translating the English-speaking agent's response directly and the agent isn't being formal, it comes across as not very formal in the German translation or in the Japanese translation. Could you provide us with a formal engine without having to go through this, you know, formal engine training process that's very expensive and time consuming? And SYSTRAN is really great about spinning up a formal engine for all of the languages where the formal tense and the informal tense is an option. So that's just one example of a cultural norm that we can handle via the SYSTRAN integration with Language.io. Obviously, in the dictionary where you're loading the way you want particular words translated, that's also going to take a lot of that into account as well.
Excellent. I'll push a couple more your way. This one's relatively simple. Does your spell checker algorithm work both ways for both the agent and the customer?
Yeah, and the spell checkers vary a little bit by CRM, but all the CRMs that we integrate with do have internal spell checkers. Of course, language-specific spell checkers are also important, and there are different ways that we can handle that on the agent side, because obviously the agent is going to be monolingual in most cases, but we do have a solution for that. I just won't get into the weeds on it today.
Okay, perfect. And this one that I've seen actually a couple times, it's a really good question. So does the length of the translation impact the quality in terms of what the end user sees? So the longer the content, does that have any degradation on the quality of the translation?
When it comes to machine translation, I mean, Jay, you can speak to this just as easily as I can. Sometimes the neural engines versus the statistical engines do some folks will say that neural is better with shorter content and statistical is better with longer pieces of content. But honestly, in the customer support scenarios that we're talking about with individual chats and most of the time with emails, it's not that much content that we're dealing with. Right. So yes, but in our customer support scenarios, we're generally covered via neural.
Makes sense. Okay. Well, some of the other questions are repeats of a few that we just asked. What I'd like to do is turn it back over to Heather. Heather, I believe you have a ROI calculator that you guys have put together that you wanted to demonstrate. So of course, all this culminates into one question. How does this benefit my organization in terms of some of the content Heather's already produced for you guys in terms of savings, not having to staff up to be able to handle to have multilingual capability in your organization. But when we get down to the core of it, comes down to dollars and cents. So Heather, if you wanted to kind of demonstrate for us the ROI calculator tool that your team has put together, just to kind of give us a little bit of background as to how that would impact an organization.
Absolutely. And Jay, you can still see my screen, correct?
Yes, you're still visible.
All right. So we have created a pretty handy ROI calculator that we share with customers and prospects alike to show the difference between what you would pay if you were to staff up with native speaking customer support agents versus using your existing or monolingual support agents plus the LanguageIO SYSTRAN technology combo. And it's a pretty sophisticated calculator that takes a lot into consideration. So beginning over here on the right, the technology varies a little bit cost-wise depending on the CRM, but we're just going to stick with the Salesforce scenario. Staffing location plays a role. You might have staffed up your support team in Manila. You might have done it in the United States. So the cost per agent varies drastically depending on where you are actually staffing up your monolingual support team, right? And then, of course, there are other variables that play into your cost of labor. Now, before I dive into these variables, let me just begin by saying we're not just showing you the cost difference between staffing up native speaking agents versus the cost of our technology. We're showing you the difference between staffing up with native agents versus the cost of our technology coupled with existing agent time spent using our technology. So that's a pretty important differentiator there, because obviously even using our technology, a human agent will still need to be responding to these questions. It's just that they're able to respond to questions in any language using our technology. So we still account for the time that an actual human support agent is spending using our technology. I just want to make sure that it's clear. So it's a truly valid comparison between the two models. So when it comes to what you're going to spend on human agent time and staffing up, so how many agents per supervisor are required in your organization? So we're kind of using industry standards here. if you have access to this ROI calculator, if you're interested in it, let me know, and you can plug in your own values. Turnover percentage. So turnover is generally high for customer support agents. The industry standard that we've heard most recently is 40%. So we're keeping it lower here and taking that into account. How many weeks does it take to train up a new agent? What kind of fringe benefits are you offering, and what percentage of the total dollars spent goes into fringe benefits, into other overhead, all of the technology, the office space that they need, etc. How many languages are you supporting? And this value, more than many values, is going to dictate how much you're spending. The more languages you support, the more you're going to save by using this technology combination. Of course, how many days a week are you supporting your customers? I mean, maybe you don't provide weekend support, and maybe you don't provide evening support. It's just a business hours only scenario, you know, et cetera. So there are all sorts of ways that you can spin this and change the return on investment that you're going to see in this calculator. I'll leave it 24/7 for now. And based on these values that you're plugging in, you're going to see changes. So if we now scroll down right here under staffing model versus language IO/MT model, you're going to see the staffing difference, right? So just staffing up per language that you need to support. In this case, you're supporting 10 languages. You know, you're looking at a lot of money here. Annually, you're looking, and bear in mind, we're saying 24/7 support, $3,394,125 versus just using your existing agents to field all of the volumes that you're going to be seeing coming through. Oh, one other thing that I should have mentioned earlier, but I didn't, and this is really important. Over here on the left, on average, how many non-base language, or how many incidents per year do you get? How many cases per year do you get that require translation? I'm going with 25,000 in this scenario, or 25,000 chats in this scenario, and 25,000 cases, or 30,000 cases in this scenario. Also, average words per chat session and average words per case will play a role. You might be different than the industry standard. We've plugged in industry standards here. And then also, what is your agent's capacity per year? How many chat sessions can an individual agent cover per year? And then how many cases can an individual agent field per year? So all of this plays a role as well. Changing those values will also change the costs that you're seeing down here. So this right here is the cost to use your existing monolingual support agents to field those volumes. We add to that the cost of our technology. And the way our technology works is you buy a package of words all at once, and SYSTRAN is very similar. So in the end, what you're seeing here are total annual costs. So to staff up across all the languages that you need to support would be this value over 3 million on the left. To use the SYSTRAN language IO technology combination plus the labor of your existing monolingual agents is almost $1 million less. So you can see a really significant savings no matter how you slice it. So happy to provide something like this to folks who are interested in playing with their return on investment through this language combination, technology combination. Any questions about that, Jay, that we should field?
No, Heather, I think we're good to go. I mean,
Okay.
There's some items that we'll bundle for the group after. So if you wanted to go ahead and close.
Sure, happy to.
Oh, Heather, have we lost your audio?
Nope, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Okay, excellent. All right, so I'll go ahead and share my screen back with you guys. All right, just a moment. All right, so you should have a good view of some contact information that we'd like to leave you guys with. And essentially what's going to happen now is that, you can reach out to myself or Heather using any of the information that you see on your screen. But after the webinar, what we'll do is we'll send out a short email with some additional information. We had some other really great questions that came in over the course of the Q&A portion that we hadn't had a chance to get to, but what we'll do is we'll kind of bundle it all up, send it your way for consumption. But I do want to just make one last comment. So Heather, thank you for participating in today's webinar. For the group, this is truly what innovation looks like when it comes to machine language translation technology. It's the ability to give your products true global scope in terms of reach and being able to localize products and services specific to the language of the customer that you're attempting to service. So again, for those of you that are interested in learning more about Language I/O, what products they offer, or what products SYSTRAN offers directly with regards to machine language translation, I'll send you some information after the call that'll be able to get you up to speed on what offerings that we have and be able to schedule meetings to have further discussions with you all. So Heather, did you have anything else that you wanted to say in order to close out, or are we good?
No, Jay, just thank you for the opportunity. We're really excited about the partnership and hope to hear more from folks interested in this.
Excellent. Thank you all. We'll be getting back to you before the end of the day with a summation of what we covered today. Thanks. Good day.